And greetings, everybody. I'm Salvador Cordova. Welcome to the Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith video channel. And a special welcome to my brothers and sisters from McLean Bible Church, the church that threatened me with arrest and jail if I ever try to worship there. And so that's an ongoing drama. On other places here and also the internet, I've explained what happened. I found evidence that there has been some financial misdealings, and whether or not it is associated with my discovery, I know that on Wednesday, September 29th, I was invited to a congregational dinner, and the pastors were saying, "Brother, you're welcome to come to dinner." That following Sunday, in the middle of the worship service, security approached me and said, "Sir, can we have a word with you?" And they told me that I was forbidden from the property. If I remained, I would be, charges would be pressed and I could go to jail. So there's something up, but on that, the 29th was going to be the congregational dinner for me and others. On the 30th, I released a video that raised serious suspicions about the integrity of their financial statements. And I had a feeling that coming Sunday, I would be in big trouble, and I was. So I released videos because I was also concerned for my personal safety in case there's a criminal element. We're talking tens of millions of dollars on a $150 million property. So this is more than just a squabble over doctrine on so many levels. There could be nefarious activities going on. And so even in my own church, there's a lot. So with that said, I haven't even updated the websites. So much news is happening. This action taken by McLean has upset a lot of people in conservative evangelical circles. They feel that the church now is, the leadership is acting very lawlessly, and I would tend to agree with that. And so this is a never-ending, drama, at least for the foreseeable future. So I'm just saying all this to say that that's not the topic we're going to cover tonight. We're going to talk about evolution with Rebekah. Now, one reason we cover evolution and creation in this channel is organized to provide evidence and reasons for the Christian faith. And for me, the way John 10:38 said, "If you don't believe my words," Jesus said, "if you don't believe my words, study the works." And so we study the works of God using the tools of science here. And part of that is, God said that in Romans chapter 1, we know something about him, his invisible attributes, his divine nature, his eternal power are revealed in the things that are made. And sometimes if people are like doubting the Bible, we just focus more on just do what Jesus said, study the works. And we study the works and we proclaim the works. And even for a believer, Jesus said, "Consider the lilies of the valley, how they grow, they neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these." The study of creation gives us comfort and reassurance that there is a God. So even for someone who's already a creationist, we focus on those things. So with that, I saw just by accident that Rebekah visited a channel whose name answers in atheism, and I was a little bit upset about that. And I said, she's throwing herself into the lion's den here. And I just didn't like that. But, I'm just like, well, this gives me an opportunity. We had promised that we would sometime, way back, maybe in this past spring, that we would eventually talk. And she's been traveling and relocating. And of course, everyone knows that my mother passed away, and I've been through that. So she has like a channel on evolution, and I've reviewed it, and I said, well, maybe I could be of help to her, because I've studied the issue professionally, and I've written publications that have appeared in secular venues under good scientific publishers that were related to evolutionary biology. So I kind of offered my willingness to help. I said, why do you want to hang out in those atheist channels? You get to hang out with the #1 creationist in YouTube. So Rebekah, please introduce yourself, and maybe I will, after the video is over, after this stream is over, I can put some of the links to your websites and your video channels. So
great. Well, I'm Rebekah Davis. I am a Christian evangelist, and I also just kind of started venturing into making videos about evolution, trying to expose people to the truth about it. Although recently, because of the move and different things that I'm doing now, I've kind of dropped off with that project. But it is a topic that comes up all the time on my other YouTube channel, Bread of Life channel, and in conversation with the lost atheists and even other Christians who, for me, I don't really mind if other Christians believe in evolution, but still, it is a topic that comes up. So yeah, thanks for having me on your channel, Sal. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to talk with you. I'm excited to get equipped to answer people's questions, and I think you will help me a lot. I was telling you that I'm not really interested in debating people. I don't want to debate people, but I do want to change their minds about the Lord if they don't know Jesus. And so I'd like to be able to answer their questions in a more scientific way. But did you actually watch when I was on Mike's channel? Did you watch the footage? No. Were you scared that I was just gonna just bomb?
No, it's more that, well, yes, but because I've gone through the ringer too over 20 years, and I know how these guys operate, but and I had to get a lot of education to begin to hold my own, because they'll throw a lot of, one thing that they'll do is they'll just use a lot of terms you don't understand.
Right.
And they'll just try to demean you. And you don't realize that they've actually given you totally non-answers, things that are circular reasoning. And so it was pretty painful that I had to go study their literature. It was just like, this is disgusting. And then I said, okay, I will respect. One thing that I've learned is you have to respect that Jesus said, be gentle as doves, as wise as serpents. I mean, this is not going to be a playground. It's going to be a battlefield. And they will fight you really well. Evolution theory has progressed, not just because at this current stage, they control kind of, all of academia, and they can deplatform people, but they actually have very well-crafted arguments. I'm not saying that they're right, but like, as we can see, someone can argue for a false position, but they can do it so well that you think that they made their case. And I would classify the arguments for evolution there. The second thing is, it says in Proverbs 25:2, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, it's the glory of kings to search it out. So sometimes the way to falsify evolution is not necessarily the easiest or most obvious. So, but as far as you being on Mike's channel, the main reason I didn't watch it is I just don't, I think I'm going to lose brain cells each time I visit that channel. I mean, I've heard his critiques of some of the stuff I said, and I just got fed up, because it's like, you didn't address any of the scientific points. You totally misrepresented my argument. I didn't say that. You just made it up, and I just got fed up. And then the other thing is, there are a lot of Satanists on that channel. There's a point, you don't throw your pearls before swine. And I know that's such a mean thing to say, but it's what Jesus said. don't cast your pearls before swine, lest they turn and trample over you. And I put them in that category at this point, because all I was doing at one point on my channel, I was just reading John chapter 9, the story of the blind beggar, and then 1 Kings 14, the story of Jeroboam's son, whom the Lord took home because there was something good found in him. And then they played that the next day on their channel when I was just doing a reading of the gospel and then the Old Testament. In the process of listening to me say that, they started swearing their allegiance to Satan. They started saying all sorts of vulgar things that I couldn't quote on this family-friendly channel. I said, okay, this is nothing I want to deal with. Why don't I go and spend time with my Christian brothers that would be comforted by this? So I'm not saying this is that you shouldn't go. If the Lord has called you there and he hasn't called me there, it's still a valid calling for you. So maybe you're just the person for that group, but I know I'm not, because I've never been blessed. And I just will point this out to my viewers. In the 20 or so years that I've been talking about evolution creation, none of the anti-theists or atheists that I know of that I've interacted with ever changed their mind, even those that I prayed for. However, Christian Darwinists became creationists. And I found that more fulfilling use of my time. And it's also great when I can talk to Christians and they're wavering in their faith and they want to believe. I find that more rewarding. So you're going into a space that is challenging, and I clearly have not been successful there. Maybe you will. So that was a long answer to your question. Why didn't I watch? So tell me what it was like. How about that interaction when you were just one person and 9 evolutionists?
Well, that was a little the time when I was just with me and Mike talking, that was totally fine the whole time. But when it was me, there were 9 people in there, I was mostly talking to somebody named CRISPR, but that was a little tough simply because he was bringing up like some things that I hadn't heard of and kind of presenting them as evidence. Now, had I been able to look over what he was presenting prior to, then I would have been able to respond. But in the moment, it's a little bit tough. But I mean, overall, they were nice to me, and I really didn't have a problem with it. I felt stupid a few times, but that's okay. And when people, and there's lots of mean comments, but that's fine with me. And when people make mean comments, all I just hear is cha-ching, cha-ching, heavenly rewards coming my way for being persecuted for righteousness. So it's not really a big deal. And I really just, I seek to listen and understand other people's perspectives. So I'm fine with hearing their perspectives.
Well, maybe sometimes that's all we can do, is just to listen and say, okay. I mean, the value sometimes when I do interact with the other side is just to hear what they have to say and to see if I understand. And I will say that the first few years I totally didn't understand I wouldn't say I totally didn't. I had a hard time understanding what they were saying because there were so many terms that I didn't understand. And then they'll cite papers and suggest it's proof. So I personally haven't found an easy way, aside from studying hard, to be able to be equipped. So there are people like that are Bible translators that'll take the Bible and translate it into a language, like the Wycliffe translators. And like that's years of work to speak the language of your intended audience. And I think talking about evolution with these people it's like becoming a Bible translator. You actually have to learn their language to be effective to communicate. So it's not I don't think it's an easy thing to really be able to do it at the maximum level, but they're probably, I've been really thinking what sort of shortcuts could help people. And because God didn't make things in such a way that you need a PhD to defend his creation. There's enough that's evident there. And so what sort of things did you say? And I can maybe just try to build on that.
Well, I would
Like,
say
did they
the
ask you why
thing,
you believe in creation or why you reject evolution?
well, yeah, and I mean, the main point that I kept making again and again, and this is the same point that I make and I don't really get a response to. But so if you have a more articulate or more informed way of asking this, then I would love to hear it. But basically, I was just trying to get them to identify a mechanism by which new structures and organs could be built within an organism. I said, I'm hearing you say mutation. Mutation, we know that does cause changes within an organism. But how does those changes translate to like a new structure within the organism rather than just a change that's either negative, harmful to the organism or neutral. And like, even if it's something that we could call beneficial, we need more than that. We need like a mechanism that actually introduces new information. And we don't observe mutation, natural selection, genetic drift doing that, right? So like, and then of course they say, yes, we do. Yes, we do. You see, I can show you the mutations, blah, 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 blah. And then it just kind of goes around and around in a circle. And I say, okay, present your evidence. And then, they say, oh, there's too much. And then I can't break it all down for you, and so that's just kind of how it goes. And then, they occasionally will present evidence of, let's say, a new structure being formed. And that's one of the things that they did in the conversation with all those atheists. One of them said, oh, well, there's these tubarial glands that have now been, that are new developments within, humans. Now, I had never heard that. And
Neither have
so,
I.
okay. And so like, I was like in the spotlight, so I didn't really have time to look it up too well. But eventually there was a break in the conversation where I looked it up and I saw that it was something that might be a new discovery, but that doesn't mean that it is a newly evolved structure. So, and that's the trick I've kind of seen again and again. I've seen it. I have a video on examining evolution with rapid lizard evolution, these new gut structures that supposedly formed. And when I actually looked at what happened, it wasn't a formation of a new gut structure. It was already something that lizards are capable of doing, of, spontaneously forming depending on, what their diet is like. So anyway, usually these things, the evidence that they present doesn't pan out, but their excuse for not being able to present evidence of things like new organs evolving, they say, well, we just need much more time. That's the reason we've only been observing evolution for, a couple hundred years. So we don't really have a way to see these, we can't offer you this proof of these new organs forming because that takes millions of years. And then I just say, well, that's a nice story that you're telling me, but where is the if it's scientific, it's observational. So this is kind of how we just go around and around.
Well, I have to say, I'm already stumped because I've never had an easy time arguing against evolution without getting very, very technical fast. Now, I will say my last debate with an evolutionist, I think I steamrolled him pretty good. But what I had to do is like what they were doing with you. They're throwing all these terms. I did the reverse on them. I'm just like, I took angles that they didn't know. But this would be for someone that has taken a few biology classes at least.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's very difficult is to make general, claims that there's no new information or no new structure. I think there actually is. Some creationists think there is some capacity to generate a little bit, but it's within limits. So what they will normally cite are things that probably can adapt a little bit, but um, like a car, you could throw a few pieces off, like the air conditioner, and it'll still function. And you could strip down and make it run faster because it's just lighter. Any number of things, but it doesn't mean you can make it into an airplane. So for me, I said, so you believe in universal common ancestry? And a lot of them will say yes. That's changing now. So I say, do you believe eukaryotes and prokaryotes share a common ancestor? And that's usually, they're done at that point because they don't have any answers. I mean, because then I'll go into all the complicated cellular biology. And that's actually been the strongest argument. That's the hardest to make, to articulate it. But in 3 years that I've been doing this, they just look like fools when I do that. I need to find an example for you that you could challenge, that even a little kid, because so I have to think about that. There's some that are not, they're not the most comprehensive, but I'll say, okay, so do you say a giraffe and a blade of grass have a common ancestor? So you see that pine tree out there? Are you saying that's my distant cousin? Obviously you have very different organs. That's what I started to try. And they'll come back and they'll say, well, we have all these papers with phylogenetic blah, 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 which I know is nonsense. But it's the absurdity of that. It's like, okay, so you think a chicken and a worm had an ancestor, or a chicken and, let's say, so let's say a bird and an elephant. Are you saying that their ancestor was a fish? And of course they'll give just a nonsense answer, and I know it's nonsense, but do you think we're fish? Because one evolutionary biologist said we're a fish. I'm like, no, we're not a fish. We have a different structure. So that's what I would try. And sometimes the best way to find out is to just try an argument, and if it fails, you don't use that one. That's about the best. So maybe that's learning by trial and error. But I when I first said that before a group of atheists, they said, I wish you wouldn't use those examples, because I said, yeah, because it makes evolution look stupid. He said, yeah, it does.
Okay, so that's cool.
I got to tell you something funny.
All right.
I was talking to, I approached, I said I could teach your kids creationism. Of course, they brought me to a 6-year-old. I'm just like, Lord, I teach to PhD levels. What am I going to say? But anyway, I was talking to the parents. I said, the evolutionists teach that mommy and daddy, human mommy and daddy, came from fish. And the little 6-year-old said, that's stupid. Like, yeah, out of the mouth of babes. So
takes a lot of indoctrination to undo that common sense that we're born with, right?
Yeah. And the more that I studied this, it's like it starts to be absurd. There are even some other ones, like, so maybe just broadly, just get a few examples and try them out. Rather than saying, how does evolution make new structures? Point to a specific structure, like the fish and so forth. The other one
Okay.
is, I'm sorry to be kind of graphic here, but do you know what defines mammals? It's the mammary
Well,
gland.
like,
It's the
oh, really?
ability to nurse the children.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them how, ask them how milk-bearing breasts evolved. And the current theory is it evolved from sweat glands. I'm like, okay, so you have a little baby and he needs some food. Is he gonna lick up his mother's sweat? I mean, guys,
For millions of years
yeah. And I know
until you
that
finally
really
get
gets
a
under their
drop of
skin.
milk.
They said, oh, we have all our phylogenetic methods that prove this. I'm just like, okay. I mean, it's several levels more studied to show that it that is really ridiculous. But I would say it's a good argument because at the superficial level, it's like, okay, so, little Junior there's kind of licking up mommy's sweat and he's getting a little bit of nourishment. I'm like, does that, and then over each generation, he starts sucking more sweat. And then eventually it becomes milk bearing. It's like, how does he not starve in the process? Excuse me.
That's a really good one. I hadn't even thought about that.
Oh
But
yeah, there
like,
are a few of them like that.
well, like Andrew Kaufman, and I want to thank Andrew Kaufman and Doki Doki SFT fan club and Greenie and just you're like for and even Jungle Jargon just for your support on my channel because they have been very supportive. And Andrew Kaufman just put in here that I made some great points on problems with evolution of reproduction. So that's one of the videos that I made on my channel is about sexual reproduction. How does that happen? You don't have millions of years to get
it right.
a mate, that with a complementary reproductive system. You have the lifetime of that organism for it to develop its reproductive system and for it to get a mate with a complementary reproductive system. If that doesn't happen within the lifetime of that organism, there's no next generation. So the whole idea is crazy. And I tried to look up, I mean, I've looked up like the evolutionary explanation for that, and it just looks ridiculous. But is that something that you have studied at all? Like, how would you describe their explanation?
I'll tell you why I haven't pursued it. Is because it gets into kind of not family friendly territory, especially if there are kids in the audience. And I just don't want to, that's primarily why. I wanted to have arguments that I could share, because one guy started talking about all the anatomical details. I said, please, not on this channel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that it isn't a good argument. It's just really for that reason I don't cover it.
Right.
So, but I think, okay, this may sound funny, but I actually think a woman is freer to talk about it without looking kind of strange. So I think it's okay for you, but not for me.
Okay.
I'm looking up something here. It is related to reproduction, but it doesn't get too graphic. Oh, here. Let me show you this. Okay, so this is a little graphic, but I don't have to go into too much detail. But let me bring this up. I mean, this isn't proof against evolution, but kind of like at the elementary level, you just want to ridicule it. And if you really want to get into the serious stuff, then that's a lot more work. But let me see if I can expand this just so it's a little. Okay. So you see like this is the mouth, and then there's the heart here, and then the stomach, and then the anus, and then the urogenital opening. which is like it's analogous to a vagina. Now, if you think about the order and the sequence of the organs and the openings, it's backward than what you have in a human being. So they'll say, oh, well, the fish has this part similar. But I said, okay, we'll grant that it has similar parts, but how do you flip this reversed?
Mm.
And how did that evolve? And you can kind of go from there. I'm not going to go, okay. I just thought this was kind of funny. I said the Lord has a sense of humor because this is, so male fish sees this and, how did that evolve? Because the male has to be, attracted to the mate. And there are instances like that where it's like, oh, she's built different, and he'll just look and say, oh, it's not you, it's me, and then he'll swim away. But that's kind of like one example. So, maybe, so you have the one with the mammary glands. This one isn't quite as strong an argument. They'll throw at you stuff like the cloacal phase or all, but just throw this up a little bit because it'll get a lap. But I think you'll have a strong one with the mammary glands, and then asking, okay, so do you think chickens and elephants descended from a fish, an ancestral fish? And just try it and see the reaction you get. Now, the meter, he's coming on there on Saturday, and he does stuff on origin of life. That will be very technical. I don't, I would just refer them to James Tour's videos, because abiogenesis is a different phase, and that is just brutally technical. So
right.
I'll have to think about some more fun things. So we do the mammary glands, and then do you think of a fish and a elephant? I mean, an elephant and a bird evolved from a fish. I mean, you look at a parrot. Let me see if I could. See if I have birds of paradise. Oh, there's some beautiful birds. Let me see if I could find. I mean, almost any bird you can. Oh, here's one. Let me show this one. And I think this would resonate with the kids, just like that 6-year-old who said that's stupid. I think they can see that. Are you saying this bird descended from a fish? And just keep asking them that. And then they'll say, oh, we have all the steps and all. And just like, well, that's the counter argument. That's when they'll get into the weeds and they'll try to make it. But it's just like, did you account for all the organs? So again, actually, this is a variation of what you said. It's hard for evolution to make an organ, and there are lots and lots of organs. And so if they throw all this other stuff about the fossil record and all, it's like, okay, the first thing I'd say is we don't have any soft tissue that really tells the story, because a lot of organs have to be transformed. But you can start at that level. It would be good enough. And if someone's really studious, they'll see all the problems going from a fish to a bird. What they will do is they'll just focus on the bones. And I'm like, there's way more to transforming than just the bones. Just because, let's say hypothetically, you could evolve the bones of a fish into a bird. What about all the soft organs? But even that being said, let's see. What I've done is I would actually look at, oh, here's a picture. See if I have it. So this is the bones of a fish. The skeleton of a fish. Let's see, how about skeleton of, I'm just picking this out randomly. I mean, you could see the difference between the bird and the fish. They might say they're gradual differences, but I'm just like, guys, this is, at some point, it's just kind of hard to believe the transformation. They might get something. There may be something. One thing I will say is there can be a transitional to some extent. There could be something that's kind of in between, but it's not good enough. Usually, I tell creationists, don't say that there are no transitionals, because clearly you can take a whole bunch of random organisms and kind of line them up in terms of similarity. And you can sort of say, well, this one's a little more similar than this one. And in a sense, it's kind of like transitional, but it's not a sufficient transitional. So just that's what I would do at a superficial level. Just show a bird and a fish and just start to talk about everything that needs to be transformed. Where they begin to lose the argument is when you get into details. So they will say, oh, well, we have this similar organ with the fish. It's like, yeah, I grant that. But what about the things that are different? So their argument usually is, oh, this is proof of evolution because we have similar organs. And we do. But the problem is, what about the things that are different? Just like what you said. So I'm just kind of improving the basic argument you gave.
Cool.
Was that at all helpful?
Yeah. It's good.
Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing how that worked out for you. Hope you're, maybe out of courtesy to you, I should listen in to what you, to some of your interactions. And
that's not important. Yeah. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time.
Well, actually, I think, no, this is good because it's good to have an example where we can kind of work the way down, at the superficial 6-year-old level. That one about the fish and mommy and daddy and the little boy saying that's stupid. It's like, I think that will hold. The only reason I haven't pursued it more, it's actually harder than the transition I talked about, the eukaryote and prokaryote. That's just it's technical, but it's actually easy. We have a lot of data. The stuff between a fish and a bird, I would have to actually learn a lot to argue it like in detail. But you still have that kind of 6-year-old intuition that this is just silly to think. I mean, yeah, when I throw that out, that it's like, yeah, do you really think we evolved from like something that looked like a worm? And it's like, yeah, no. So I'm curious. I'd be curious. So do you have any other thoughts or?
Let's see. Well, I'm trying to think of where I might run into trouble. And I guess I would like to hear a little bit about the what you've learned about the jump from a prokaryote to your eukaryotes, because that's like, look, origin of life, and I guess Demeter may talk about origin of life, and that's fine, because I think, like, I can't, obviously I don't have the scientific expertise, but I have watched several of James Tour's videos, so I understand that there's like a lot that would have to happen for the origin of the first cell. And in fact, I have a really good book, but I guess I would have to reach up too high to get it. But it's called From Matter to Life, and it's actually like 30 origin of life researchers. Basically, it's like kind of a compilation of their articles on the origin of life. And it's obvious when you read the book that they admit that they don't know how life could have originated. And even though they're like working diligently on that problem, they haven't solved it. So, I think origin of life is, even for a lay person, that doesn't understand the technical, I think I've got the idea that we don't know how it happened. So usually people don't want to talk about the origin of life because that's too hard. They want to say, well, once we don't know how origin of life happened, but once life got started, then it's all figured out, basically. Like, and so I know that's not true. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about the difficulty of the jump from a prokaryote to eukaryote.
Okay, so it's probably helpful just to see. I found a 5.5 minute cartoon to explain,
Cool.
and when you actually see it, you can you begin to get a hint of it. But sure, thank you for your audience, because this is now we're going into something a little more technical. It's just a little bit above 6-year-old level. But actually, you know what? I think sometimes an argument, Einstein said, if you can't explain it to an 8-year-old, your argument's no good. So there is something to be said about being able to make an argument that even a child can understand, because it means it's a pretty forceful one. So let me see if I can get this going here. I might have to mute you briefly.
Sal, we can't hear it.
I'm sorry, it's too soft, or there's no sound at all.
There's no sound at all.
Okay, let me try to think how to do this. Give me 1 second. Let me see.
Why don't you just explain it to us and give us the link and we can watch it later?
Because it's kind of fun to watch it with people.
Okay.
Can I just try one more time?
Sure.
Let's see. Okay. We'll try it one more time. I do apologize. So let's try it. Share system audio, and let me try it this way. I'm gonna just unmute yourself if you can't hear it again.
I'll never forget a circular red spot I developed on my arm when I was in elementary school. It left a lasting memory in my mind because it was something called ringworm. And with my active imagination, I thought I was now infected with a ring shaped worm. I learned you got to be careful about names because ringworm isn't caused by a worm at all. It's actually a fungus, which it turns out is pretty common and can be carried by many things like pets or soil. And since up to that point I was used to antibiotics as a way to treat infections, I assumed I'd be given antibiotics. But I wasn't. I was given an antifungal cream instead, and it went away. So it made me wonder what made it different from the bacteria that had made me sick in the past. Why wasn't I given antibiotics? Well, antibiotics target bacteria. Antibiotics can destroy bacteria by affecting their ability to reproduce, damaging their cell walls, or interfering with their ability to make proteins that they need to survive. Just some examples. But it turns out bacterial cells and fungal cells are very different cell types. In fact, fungal cells have more in common with your cells, which are animal cells, than they have in common with bacterial cells. And that has a lot to do with the comparison of prokaryotic cells with eukaryotic cells, which is what we will focus on. First, just a refresher, recall that the modern cell theory includes a statement that all living things are made of one or more cells. All living things. In the three domains of life, prokaryotes are organisms that can be bacteria or archaea. They are unicellular, which means they are single-celled organisms. Eukaryotes are organisms that fit all in this last domain, eukarya. Eukaryotes can be protists, plants, animals, or fungi. They can be unicellular or they can be multicellular, which means they can be made up of many cells, like you. By the way, just to clarify, the word prokaryote is typically used to refer to the organism itself. When you are describing its cell, you are describing a prokaryotic cell. Same for eukaryote. Eukaryote typically refers to the organism itself, and when you are describing its cells, those are eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells do have a lot in common. Both have DNA. That's critical because DNA is the cell's genetic material. Both prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells have ribosomes, which are small organelles, an organelle being like a tiny organ. The ribosomes have the important job of making proteins. Gotta make protein. Both cells have cytoplasm, the jelly fluid within cells. Both of them have a cell membrane, also known as a plasma membrane, which is critical because it controls what goes in and out of the cell, and therefore maintaining homeostasis. All cells have a cell membrane. Now, as for cell walls, most prokaryotic cells have cell walls. Many eukaryotic cells, plant cells and fungal cells, for example, can have cell walls. But there are plenty of eukaryotic cells that don't have cell walls, such as animal cells. What makes prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells different is especially interesting. Eukaryotic cells are more complex than prokaryotic cells. They tend to be larger than most prokaryotic cells. And to help me remember some more differences in this next part, I like to remember that pro in prokaryote rhymes with no, and eu in eukaryote rhymes with do. Prokaryotic cells have no nucleus to contain their DNA, so you will find their DNA is not contained within a nucleus. It's a bit messy here. They have no membrane-bound organelles. Membrane-bound organelles are fancy organelles that have their own membrane, like the nucleus, mitochondria, the endoplasmic reticulum, and the Golgi apparatus. A big indicator of eukaryotic cells is this nucleus. Eukaryotic cells do have a nucleus to contain their DNA. Depending on what type of eukaryotic cell it is, it could have different types of membrane-bound organelles. For example, a plant cell is likely to have chloroplasts, while an animal cell would not. Wow, look at all this alphabetized vocabulary. If you want to try to practice your skills, pause the video and see how many of these vocabulary words you can use to compare and contrast prokaryotic cells with eukaryotic cells. It's important to grasp that all cells of living things fall in one of these two categories. And understanding the characteristics of these two cell types can help us better understand the diversity of living things, whether they are archaea, bacteria, protists, fungi, plants, or animals. And in the case of my example, realizing whether an infection you're dealing with involves prokaryotic cells, such as bacteria, or eukaryotic cells, such as the fungus. Well, that's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and we remind you to stay curious.
Nice.
See, that's only five and
Good
a half
video.
minutes. Yes.
A
And
lot of
I encourage,
information in there.
yes, um, the video is very powerful. And people said, should I study evolutionary biology to critique it? I said, no, watch videos like this 20 times. And that'll be worth more than years of studying evolutionary biology. I know that's a mean thing to say for evolutionary biologists, and I just had an evolutionary biologist on my channel. But when you understand things like that, it becomes easier. Now, one reason I recommend that is most of the time the evolutionists want to talk about, oh, the fossil record and bird dino transition and all that. You want to try to debate them in an area that they're not familiar with. Or also, the other thing is, why are they silent on prokaryotic, eukaryotic evolution? I found they don't like talking about things where they know they don't have good answers. In fact, they have terrible answers, if not any. That's one area. And you can actually, the more that I have debated this area, the bigger the gaps look, the more, as each year we learn more about the difference between the cells, the case that these evolved from a common ancestors becomes just absurd. And so, again, the nice thing is you're only dealing with two classes of organisms, a prokaryote and eukaryote. When we deal with like the transition from like a fish to a bird, I can't even keep track of all the things that they claim are in between, and you have to, they'll keep throwing terms. This one's very simple, and it's also very good basic biology because, you know, just like when they're showing the difference between like the fungus and the bacteria and why you need different medicines, that's actually very helpful for us personally. Whereas stuff learning about dinosaurs, even though it's fascinating, it doesn't really impact our everyday life. So that's why I like it.
Cool.
So now that you understand a little bit about, the main difference is the eukaryote has a lot of these membrane bound organelles, these like little organs inside the cell, but they have kind of an envelope around them to keep stuff from going in or out randomly. That's very hard to build because they basically have little holes that open and close and let only certain things in. If that doesn't open and close right, the cell's dead immediately. So
Wow.
I'm glad you asked. That would be
So
like
that
an
needs
hour.
to be, yeah. And then like the nucleus. So do they say, so the eukaryote has a nucleus, the prokaryote doesn't, right?
Correct.
And so how then, but what is their current story about how this changed? Do they say it went from, like, how do they say this occurred?
Okay, they will change the subject and said, we have a phylogenetic reconstruction that show it did. And I'm like, no, that's not. Okay, so what they mean is they'll find some protein in the prokaryote that's also in the eukaryote. And they'll say that's proof it evolved. I'm like, no, it's not, because what about the proteins that are only in the eukaryote? That's a start. And then they have something called a nuclear localization signal, and that's where I really started to get them. So like when we have to enter a house, we have what? Keys, where you have a code. So let me bring up a diagram here. Let's see. So I'll just review this. Yeah, because in my last debate, the guy was just like on his heels. He's like, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's exactly the problem. And so it was. Have you heard of James Downard?
Yes.
Oh, I got him. I hammered him pretty bad on that. He so I debated him on this. So let me just bring this up. Eukaryote. I can refer you to that debate at some point. But fundamentally, I didn't get the, I apologize here. I'm trying to, if this were a slideshow that I could have prepared in advance, I would have done it, but this is all on the fly. I'm trying to look for a diagram that is like relatively clear, because some of them are just a little bit too, I mean, it's great that they have details, but it doesn't make for a simple presentation. Okay, so here is a eukaryotic. Let me get that.
Okay.
I have the wrong, hang on, let me do a stop share. And I'm going to reshare an easier diagram. Just one moment.
But now, what is the, I know you said they identify proteins that are similar, but do they say the prokaryotic cell came first and then the eukaryotic cell? And do they say how they think the nucleus developed?
No. I mean, there are various theories, and each of them are equally absurd. What I specifically said is okay, what I say is I don't argue against common ancestry. I'll just say, okay, let's just say for the sake of argument, I'm a young earth creationist, by the way, but let's say for the sake of argument, let's say it evolved. I would just say you need miracles to make this work. And they'll say, no, it can happen by random mutation and selection. So this is one reason I like this example. They'll say mutation and selection and drift can do this. And I'll say, no, it can't, because the creature will be dead. So if you start with what you'll probably see in a lot of books, they'll say it probably started out as a prokaryote because it's simpler. And then the prokaryote became a eukaryote, which is more complex. So it's going from simple to complex. Some people have said the eukaryotes first and then the prokaryote, but I said that you have a bigger problem. How did the eukaryote become first? Because it's so much more complex. I mean, orders of magnitude more complex. And this will throw them for a loop because they would much rather talk about like human chimp ancestry. And I don't even argue that. I prefer to argue this, and you'll have an easier time. So let me show. So this is let me zoom out a little bit here. So the prokaryote is on the left. That looks like a bacteria there. And then the eukaryote is on the right. And so you could see all these kind of like these are organelles here, and they have little, they're enclosed by these membranes. And so a membrane is kind of like a wrapping that has little gates in it that will let only select things go in and out. And if the protein doesn't have the right code, it can't get in. Mm-hmm. And there's some proteins that are life critical, that if it can't go in and out. And I've challenged evolutionists. I said, how does the creature not die? Because what good is it to build like this enclosure and nothing can go in and out? The cell's immediately dead. You have to have all the parts working. And they don't have answers. Because I will say, see, God made it such that you can't give a naturalistic answer. You're forced to conclude a miracle was needed if you want to be honest, because this isn't the same as like mutating some small gene and it's just like, make a different skin color or something, or eye color. This is a major change where it's life or death. You get it right, you only have one shot. And I've never gotten what I consider great answers. And you could try it. Because, they'll say, well, look, chimps and humans are so similar. That's proof of evolution. I said, that doesn't prove the eukaryote prokaryote transition, does it? So let's just grant that. How about, can you extrapolate that back to the eukaryote prokaryote? So now this is now something very sophisticated in your repertoire. Do you want to? Okay, so this is batting practice. Do you want to? Okay, so if they ask you, why are you creationist? You can give some answers. Do you want to just practice it? I'm here. So
yeah. Oh,
sure.
You mean where I'm now going to express this to you? What you just
I'll help
said?
you. So
Oh
just
my gosh.
start like with the mammary gland. Try the mammary gland one. Go ahead.
All right, Sal. All right, Sal, you evolution believer. So can you please tell me how the mammary gland developed? How does that happen, in enough time that the baby can get the nourishment it needs? How does that happen?
Well, the sweat glands are very similar to the mammary glands that make milk. And so somehow...
You can't live off sweat, Sal.
Sure you can. And so, so Junior will just keep sucking on some part of mommy and getting a little bit of nourishment, and the next generation will get more. Okay, I totally failed that one. I think it's going to be interesting what they have to say. But okay,
yeah,
very good. See, that wasn't hard.
I know, that's fine. Yep. All right. So, how did you get, where do you go from a prokaryotic cell to a eukaryote? How do you get this thing to happen, this transition to happen between these two?
Oh, look at all the papers on endosymbiosis.
Oh, I don't know anything about that. Break it down.
All these literature. Okay, I'm sorry.
I don't know anything about that. You'll have to break it down. I know you stay in character, Sal.
I can't do that. I'll do what? Oh, look, we have that alpha protobacteria creating the endosymbiosis. Do you distribute that?
I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, Sal, but what I want to understand is how you get a nucleus when there's no nucleus, or how do you get this, wall to build itself, but still, have everything, the proteins that need to get in, able to get through, and how do you have all that happen at once?
Oh, it can happen gradually. See, that's the fallacy of creationism. They all want it all at once. But, natural selection is kind of just in pieces. And
I want to understand how the organism could survive if it happened in pieces.
Well, we're here, aren't we? I'm sorry. I don't know what to say because, Leo Phileas will just Google and said, oh, look, I got a paper here on eukaryotic evolution and nuclear pore complexes. But I ding speed of sound on that. And I just fed up. So,
well, Dapper Dino in the chat asks, who will Rebekah be debating? What topic? And I have to say the answer to that is probably no one. But I have, been in some situations where, I come into the live stream, like I did on Answers in Atheism a few times, and, get asked questions. And so Sal is trying to help me out here. But I am going on Answers in Atheism on Saturday to talk with Demeter. And I asked them to provide me with whatever topic Demeter is going to talk about and whatever evidence he plans to show. But they don't want to do anything formal like that. They don't want to provide me with the information prior to. So I don't know what their reasoning for that is. I think it's because maybe they just prefer to just catch me off guard. And that's fine because I don't intend to have a debate. And I definitely don't have the scientific expertise that Demeter has, even though I have no idea what his scientific expertise is, but I'm guessing that I don't. And so I'm not planning to really debate, but I do like to provide answers when people ask. So I think that's what Sal's helping me do here. He's equipping me with better answers and better questions to cause people to think.
Now your kids are growing up now. I mean, they're teenagers.
Yeah.
Do you ever teach smaller? Do you still teach kind of the younger?
No.
No more? Oh, okay.
I do not enjoy teaching children. They don't listen to me.
The reason
I
asked
enjoyed
is there's this
teaching
great
my
video
children.
called The Watchmaker. Even adults like it.
Oh,
have
really?
you ever seen it?
I don't think so. But I'll watch it.
It's a short video, but it's like one of my favorite. Oh, here it is. This time I'll try to remember to add the sound.
Because now, as
Hang
you
on.
see, we are in a studio atmosphere. We're not in a remote atmosphere anymore.
Okay, this is relatively short. So let me see if I can get this going here.
And while he's doing that, Dapper Dino said she can come by my channel if she likes. What is your channel about, Dapper Dino? And what is your viewpoint?
A long time ago on a planet so bare, some water and dirt got mixed up with the air. Some sand and some rocks to make it just right. The stage was all set in the deep of the night. A bolt of white lightning, a great peal of thunder. And suddenly there was a marvelous wonder. The rocks yielded metal, the sand turned to glass, and as the years flew, a new thing came to pass. The metal formed gears, the glass a watch face, and little by little things fell into place. The parts came together just like a good rhyme, with ticks and with tocks and with hands that tell time. A beautiful watch began ticking one day, formed all by itself in a wonderful way. Ridiculous story, you say with a grin. Impossible, laughable, surely a sin. A watch needs a watchmaker, that's plain to see. A designer and builder that makes it for me. Now all life is made of some interesting stuff. Cells of all shapes, like blobs filled with fluff. But looks are deceiving, and what we find there are factories and highways and gadgets to spare. Assembly lines, robots, electrical cable, libraries, software. Just look, if you're able. The marvels we see with a microscope stare make a watch look so simple, we dare not compare. Now the doctors from Oxford say cells came by chance, from goo down to you, in a beautiful dance. What's wrong with their thinking to have such odd notions that cells could just happen from dirt and warm oceans? A cell and its wonders amaze all who see, and a cell like a watch by chance cannot be. Those cells can build hummingbirds, agile and free, bumblebees, snails, my backyard oak tree. A woodpecker built with a jackhammer nose, lightning bug, monkeys, a beautiful rose, and beetles with bombs that gives frogs a surprise, comedians with camouflage, and some weird eyes. All nature on Earth is so perfectly fine, we have to admit that it's all by design. And our Maker owns everything, both great and small. He's the masterful watchmaker, Lord over all.
I like that. It's good. You're muted.
Sorry. There are a lot of great videos like that. And
So let's say you have to read an incredibly long email from your boss that you have to finish before the big meetings.
A lot of good videos like that. I was just thinking about the origin of life. That's a case where so many things have to be there in place simultaneously. Otherwise, it just... oh, the best one was the Humpty Dumpty. I mean, this is also very simplistic. Just take a cell and you poke it and it spills its guts, so to speak. Is it going to ever reassemble into a living cell after it's dead? Of course not. It's like a frog in a blender. And so when you take a living cell and you poke it, it has more of all the biological stuff in it than any of Demeter's origin of life experiments. Why then would you expect those trivial chemicals that he might, trivial bag of chemicals that he has compared to a living cell that was just poked? Why do you think it's going to assemble to life?
Yeah.
I said, it just occurred to me. So that's the abiogenesis argument. And then that's kind of like the very elementary version, but it really does hold water the more that you examine exactly why, because everything starts to decay and break apart. And I mean, you can, there's no limit to how detailed, but that's actually the basic argument. Why do you expect Humpty Dumpty, which is the cell, to reassemble itself? I would just keep hammering that. What chemical principle says this is going to assemble, except we just want to believe it?
Well, yeah, I made a video similar to this for my Bread of Life channel called Evolution Pizza for Breakfast Evolution Style. And I was just kind of like saying, okay, if I put all of these pizza ingredients in a bowl and I just don't feel like cooking, so I just want my pizza to be made evolution style. Like I'm just putting all the ingredients into the bowl. How long do you think I'll have to wait until I get a pizza? And, is it going to be, and it obviously it's absurd to think, even though you've got all the ingredients, right? And it's much easier to get a pizza than it is to get a living cell. But no intelligent person is going to say that bowl could ever become, the ingredients in that bowl could just come together and become a pizza on its own. And, so like, even with millions of years, what's going to happen in just a few days? It's going to rot. And this is the basic problem, even with life. I mean, these are not the kind of like life. Organic chemicals don't just like, they break down. They don't build. They don't build up, they don't assemble, they don't self-assemble. So, I mean, if just this dough, like if you can't even get dough to like shape itself into just a flat thing and sauce to put itself on top and cheese to put it, you've already got everything there. If that can't happen, how do you possibly think that all of these incredible processes that happen in a cell could ever happen on their own? How could they self-assemble? It's just like, and so in my video, it's just trying to like awaken people's common sense. And, yeah.
Well, actually, that's why like the resurrection's a miracle, because when something's dead, it stays dead. It becomes deader the longer, that it's there, because everything does break down spontaneously. And the term with the origin of life, they call it the Asphalt Paradox. And it's exactly what you said. It just tends to self-break down, not self-assemble. The natural tendency is to break down, not to assemble into coherent molecules. So that's what I would just use the word asphalt paradox. And now Mike will say something kind of like really dumb. He said, oh, asphalts are really great things, interesting chemistry. It's like, well, interesting is in the eye of the beholder. It's not going to assemble into a cell, not in a million years. What proof do you have?
All right.
What proof do you have? And then that's when you get into the James Tour chemistry, but there's no proof it's going to, it's not that it's just that the cell is complex, it's coordinated. The pieces fit together and work together. It's not just random chemistry. It's very hard to get those chemicals operating. So yeah, so your pizza thing, that's a good one. Of course, they'll say, well, it rots because of the bacteria or something. They're not being charitable, but you're in the right realm by saying that. Very simple. It took me a while. It's been so long since I've been trying to argue these things at this level, but these are actually really good arguments. I just haven't used them in a long time. That the asphalt paradox, it's just going to self-break down. That's really good. So now you've covered origin of life, eukaryote, prokaryote evolution, and then the mammary glands. And I think it'll be interesting now.
Cool.
And they'll say, well, just because, okay, I have a point here. They'll say that's an argument from ignorance. Just because we don't know that how it evolved doesn't mean it didn't evolve. And the proper counter is, what would you counter if I said that? If I said, you're just giving arguments from ignorance.
I would you mean if they're saying to my argument, just because we don't, basically argument from ignorance, just because we don't know doesn't mean it didn't happen. I would say, well, if you want to call it science, then you need to have evidence. So all you're doing is telling me a story. So, how does that story, I mean, that's fine for you to believe that story. But if you want me to believe that story and to believe that's actually science, you need observation, you need real evidence.
You know what I tell them that really gets under their skin? It's like, well, if you want to accept that as a faith statement, that's up to you, but it's not science. They hate being accused of being just true believers without proof. So it's like,
yeah.
I mean, to really get under their skin, so you just accept it without any evidence. That's faith. That's what I would say. And just see how they react, because they really resent that because they take a lot of pride in thinking that they know all the answers. They have kind of a God complex. I know that's not a nice thing to say, but the anti-theists have a God complex. When you stump them like that, and then you tell them, okay, so you don't have any evidence, you accept it on faith.
Yeah. Well, I want to mention this Greenie comment and then I'll respond to you. Greenie says, Bread of Life, while I agree with you, any comparison to a non-living example will be hand-waved away as if we don't know how organisms work. Yeah, I know. I've experienced that. Basically, like the examples, they just kind of get, oh, well, that's not, you can't compare that. So anyway, thank you, Jungle Jargon. He says, keep going, Rebekah. You are very articulate. I appreciate that because sometimes I feel like I'm bumbling around when it comes to this. So thank you.
Well, just fundamentally, I think God didn't make the world in such a way you need a PhD to defend his creation. There will be an answer that a child can raise, a question that he'll raise that will stump a PhD. And I have a funny example of that.
Okay.
I asked an evolutionary biologist, he was involved in the infamous Dover versus Kitzmiller trial, which is the big intelligent design trial. and he was the advisor to the attorneys in favor of the
Mhm.
evolutionists. And I said, hey, Nick, if you found a table full of fair coins, fair coins, heads and tails, and it were all heads on that table, would you think chance is a good explanation for the reason it's all heads? He wouldn't answer that question, because it was pretty poignant, because I think he sensed where I was going with that. I said, you can tell designs, can't you? You can tell something's really, really improbable. It's something you wouldn't expect. And he refused to answer. I posed the same question to the little kids, and I did it by illustration. It was a 6-year-old. I sent him out of the room, and I dumped a bunch of coins before I sent him away. I dumped about 20 pennies on the table, and I sent him away. And while he was away, I said, I'll call you back. Just stay there a little bit. I flipped them all heads. And then he came back. He said, you touched it. So the little kid understood something that the evolutionary biologist refused to answer. I said, see, he knows better. And then someone astutely said, no, the evolutionary biologist knew, but he had something to lose by admitting the truth.
Yeah, and actually, Sal, that is how I feel about, God. I mean, to me, it's obvious that God exists, and the evidence of design in nature, nobody ever had to tell me about that. I've always understood that. And I wonder, I mean, I don't want to outright tell people you have an ulterior motive. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe some people are just sincerely deceived, in other ways, like not of their own doing, but I think like the evidence of design is obvious.
Well, there are two levels to it. I think Jesus said that the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. And it also says in Proverbs 25:2, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, the glory of kings to search out a matter. To some extent, it's, if you're willing to see it impartially, you will see the design. But God makes it just easy enough if someone wants to close their eyes.
Yeah.
They can do it. He won't force it on them at this stage.
Yeah.
And it's the mystery. He says it's the way is easy and the path wide that leads to destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And then the opposite is the way that leads to life. So in some sense, God does make the path to see the truth not so easy. And those who are willing to strive and to discover it, they have to work a little bit or maybe a lot to find. And so sometimes really seeing the design and really being convinced of it, it's a long road. It was for me, because I nearly lost my faith 20 years ago. Wow. I said, I want to believe in God, but this is hard. My dad had just, was terminally ill at that point. And I was just dealing with that. I said, how could something so precious to me die, be on his way to death? And how come I keep praying and God doesn't heal my dad? I mean, at a very heart level, that's what I was dealing with. Right. And yet I could see the design, and I said, I can't make sense of this. But it was only like in the last few years I got kind of the answer to the problem of evil. And I did watch your video on the problem of evil.
Oh, really? You mean the one I did with Liz Jackson?
No, there was another
my own
one.
Video, like why, if God loves me, why do terrible things happen to me?
Yeah.
Like, why did this terrible thing happen to me?
So the answer I've come up with from the Bible, like in the last 5 years only, even though I've read the passage many times, 2 Corinthians 4:17, this momentary light affliction is building for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison. And I said, I actually have a video on Snow White and the problem of evil. I read the story of Snow White to one lady, just the whole thing. It's a beautiful Wikipedia entry, by the way. And I said, okay, what if I remove the evil queen from this story and all the things that happened to Snow White, all the bad things? What would the story, would it still be as beautiful? She said, no. See, that's exactly it. Without that, the affliction, like where Snow White eats the poison apple and she's dead, but then the coffin is shook, the glass coffin is shaken a little bit, and she coughs up the apple, and she's risen from the dead. I said, don't you? The reason this story resonates with people is it has all these Christian themes that are really kind of deep in our heart, and so she and the prince live happily ever after. I said, don't you see how beautiful this is? I said, don't you see that the story is beautiful because of the resurrection? It made sense of the evil queen being in the story. And I said, the resurrection in Christendom makes sense of all the evil. So that's my answer to the problem of evil. If you ever want to watch.
Cool, that's beautiful. I like that the glory is going to outshine it all. Yeah. And
yeah. I mean, it took me a while because, goodness, I'll never forget. I was, just hanging out with college students, atheists, and just kind of, I wasn't preaching to them. I was just trying to listen to them. And then this girl one time came up to me and kind of my companions, and she said, well, my friends were being really insensitive about what they said because she'd been sexually assaulted, and she was just crying. I didn't know what to say. And I said, how do I share the love of Jesus with someone like this? How can I tell her that God loves her? And that haunted me. I still pray for her to this day.
Wow.
And so that verse, 2 Corinthians 4:17, it's like, okay, this is an explanation of how, I mean, it'd be better if a woman who's survived this and is a Christian, she would be the best one to be able to share sensitively.
Right.
But at least for me, intellectually, that's the thing that really challenged me. It's like, how do I persuade people that there's a loving God out there when they suffer stuff like that? So,
well, there's a comment here that I want to respond to. Perry 343 said, as a Christian, I've struggled with macroevolution because there's fossil evidence suggesting there were primitive human species, but I'm still researching that because I feel it's important to know. And sorry, I didn't mean to change the conversation.
Oh, go ahead.
But there's more and more comments coming in, so I didn't want that one to get lost. Because, do you want to respond to that, Sal?
Yes. There are creatures very similar to us that have the organs. In fact, so there are two issues. We have, it's what I often say, intelligent design is easy to prove, creation much harder. Meaning, we have a lot of people that don't like Michael Behe. They'll say, well, I'm fine with accepting that, these creatures, one creature evolved from another, but there had to be intelligent design. And then we had the progressive creationists. They'll say, okay, we'll accept the fossil record, but we'll say that the transitions needed miraculous steps. Now, that's not exactly scriptural, but I mean, if we didn't have the Bible and we accepted the old ages of the earth, that would be a natural. It's like, we'll accept kind of the progression of creatures, but each step was kind of miraculous. And you would actually see that in your argument about sexual reproduction, because, the way the creatures reproduce, it's different at each stage. You'd have to redo a lot of the organs for both the male and the female. So it's like, okay, you can kind of say there's a fossil progression, but you need miracles to make it, just like the mammary glands. Okay, so the question is, why did God make us so similar? Because that does kind of make it the evolutionary argument easier. If they're just humans and no other creature, it's like, well, maybe be easier to believe in creation, but why do we have chimpanzees that are like 98% similar? I've seen some of the genes between humans and chimps, 100% identical. 100%.
Yeah, but I mean, that's only accounting because and I did a video about this. It's like, it's actually, they've left out the ones that they can't compare. Like, they've left out
Yeah.
28% of the genome in order to make those fit. So when they say the 2%, it's actually not 2%. It's 2%, difference after 28% of the genome has already been like taken out completely.
Well, it really depends on how the accounting is done. But what I do is, like, say, because I have seen these 100% identical genes. I really have. And it hit me kind of in a hard way. I was taking a class at the NIH on neuroscience, and I had to do a class presentation and on a particular neuroreceptor in the cell. And I was given a postdoctoral student to help me, a postdoctoral fellow to help me present the paper. And I said, can you explain, how they did this experiment? They said, oh yeah, we use these cell lines, these immortalized cell lines. I looked it up. They did the experiment. It came from aborted fetuses, and my heart sank. I don't know that I would have been able to carry out the experiment if they asked me, because I would say this seems kind of immoral. We're using someone's body parts. And I looked it up on the net. These kits are sold for like $250 to $500 for selling the baby parts. And my heart was just sinking. So how does this relate to the question of why did God make us similar to other creatures? And it hit me. I said, do you know that we would not understand ourselves if we didn't have creatures we could sacrifice and open up, like mice or pigs or any number of creatures? See, in the Old Testament, the ceremony to atone for sin, which is really a picture of Christ, is you take an animal and you have to sacrifice it so that you don't die. The way we're able to do medical research is to take creatures that are similar to us, that can die in our place, because otherwise we'd have to do medical research on one another's, on each other. We'd have to do dissections on each other. We'd have to be doing more fetal type things. God provided a way that we don't have to sacrifice ourselves so that we can be healed. And I said, that's the parallel. Now it makes so much sense that God gave us all these other creatures so that we could understand our own biology. So to Perry's question, there is definitely not just evidence in the fossil record, but even in present day life, of creatures that are very similar to us, like dogs and pigs and cats and human, chimpanzees. But they're a gift of common design. The thing, just because you have, let's say, even 98% similarity, that 2% may be requiring a miracle to make that change. You have to account for it. And that's how I deal with it. Now, ultimately, the best argument against universal common ancestry is if we're able to prove the flood and the fossil record are young. So when we can make scientific arguments for a young Earth, there's not enough time to evolve, let's say, a bacteria into a human being, or an ape ancestor into chimpanzees and humans. So that's why the arguments in favor of Noah's flood are very important to creationists, because that will, in and of itself, if we're successful, that will overcome universal common ancestry. You won't have to worry, because then the fossil record is known not to be a progression of creatures over time, that it was mostly laid down in the big flood event. That's how I would answer it.
Yeah. Well, I also I think Perry's kind of focusing in on, the like just primitive human species. So like maybe, all the Homo erectus and, all the lineage that they say happened. And, Perry, I'm not an expert on that, but I will say that whenever I've looked into it, whenever I look up one of the supposed human ancestors, I find that it's either built on like a few bones, like that were sometimes found like very far apart from each other. And so there's no like reason for these bones to be like put together, like this skull with this toe bone. And there is one that's like just like a skull and a toe bone that was found miles away. And they've built an entire, human ancestor on, those bones. And so it's really like, I think when you're dealing with paleoanthropology, you have to realize it is not empirical science. They dig in the dirt looking for what they already have, what they want to find. They want to find a human ancestor, right? And so that already, and they already believe that these human ancestors exist. So those two powerful motivators, plus the glory you're going to get if you do find a human ancestor, all of these things combined together. And I'm not saying that these scientists are, purposely fabricating things. Sometimes they have, but I'm saying most are probably honest in what they're doing. But we have to take into account all of the factors that go in when they go out digging for a human ancestor. And so that is not empirical science. It's fraught with guesswork, and it's guesswork that's based on what they already wanted to find and what they already believed they were going to find. So I would be very skeptical whenever you see a human ancestor presented to you in a book or, in an article. I would read carefully whatever article is presenting that and find out exactly, what bones are they building this human ancestor on? What, where did they find the bones? How close together were the bones? Why do they say this is a human ancestor and not an ape? Because a lot of the skulls that are being presented as human ancestors are probably just extinct apes. And so, anyway, that's what I have to say about it. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and this is I don't study human evolution that much, because I've posed this. I said, okay, if the Earth is young, like let's say we can even show it less than 1 million years. I believe it's like on the order 6,500 or 6,000. But let's say we're able to show the Earth is not older than 1 million years, or that the fossil record isn't older than 1 million years. There's no way that fossil record then really shows a progression, and there's just not enough time to evolve from a common ancestor. Beyond that, the arguments are a little bit harder, and at that point, I'm just like, okay. I mean, for me personally, it's like, well, look at all the other things that. Let's just even grant, for the sake of argument, that we evolved from chimps. It doesn't mean that there's no intelligent design, because then you have all these other gaps that are just enormous. And that's what I say. So there are a lot of people that are, that's why we had these old Earth creationists. And I was an old Earth creationist for a very long time in my life. I accepted evolution briefly after I became a Christian, but that didn't last long. Maybe 1 or 2 years after I became a creationist, an old Earth creationist. So anyway, we can talk again, Rebekah, sometime, maybe after your encounter with Demeter. And
yeah, sure.
I gave you a couple words, Asphalt Paradox.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Look, I never heard of that. I never heard of that before, but I thought I need to look that up. Yeah.
Well, just for your information, where I've gotten some of this is there are some great Christians teaching in secular schools, and they're under persecution, but they've given me this material. They're Christians and creationists, and one of them is Changed Laura Tan. She's been on this channel before.
Oh,
She's been persecuted because she came out as a creationist and she teaches at a secular school, but she is a postdoc from Harvard, and she went to Ivy League schools, and a Nobel Prize winner got her into doing molecular biology, teaching it. Very bright. And she argues, she's the one who gave me the word asphalt paradox.
oh, cool. Yeah, actually, I have her book on my shelf. I haven't read it yet, but it's the origin of like the Stairway to Life,
Stairway to Life.
Origin of Life reality check with her and Rob Stadler.
And Rob Stadler was on my channel too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be fun. And
I can't take credit for the asphalt paradox phrase. That was from Dr. Tan, who got it from an Origin of Life researcher who's probably as senior as Demeter, if not more so. So you got that phrase, and now you have the prokaryote transition, prokaryote to eukaryote transition, the mammary glands, and I think you've got a nice arsenal now.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Sal. It's been fun, and I love your audience. It's like so many supportive people, and so thank you all. Appreciate you guys watching.
So maybe we'll meet again. I can't tell you how fun this was. And by the way, I have to tell you, you have a very nice speaking voice. And I said, that would really kind of lift my channel because I don't like my voice. But I think you have, has anyone told you that you'd make a good announcer or something? You have just a very nice.
Not really.
Okay.
I think my voice is a little bit weird. Maybe some people have. They've said I have a nice singing voice.
Are you an alto or a soprano?
Alto.
I was about to say, yeah, I could have that. I used to be a music student, so I that's another side of me. Anyway, so we can, good luck on Saturday. I think you'll avail yourself very well. And you know
need
what?
To save me in the chat, Sal. You just need to be in the chat, just typing answers.
Well, I probably will be. I'm going to go up to Pennsylvania to hear a creationist talk. Good friend. Mats, are you here? Mats knows this guy. I'm going to see Dr. Job Martin again. He runs Biblical Discipleship Ministries, and it's just kind of a good spiritual experience just to hear him speak, because all the stuff going in my local church is just really wearing on me. So it's just nice to fellowship with a brother. Yeah, so Mats is here. Here you go.
Wow. Hi, Matt.
His dad went, this random thing, his dad went to school with Dr. Martin, and I'm going to be seeing Dr. Martin.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So it's just kind of funny when you meet someone in the side chat and then you know people in common. So, all right. Well,
Okay.
I know you'll do well because the Lord is on your side and he created things.
Well, my goal is not to win an argument. I want to win people to the Lord. So my goal is to love the people first, and hopefully to give good responses. But I mean, like I said, honestly, I would rather lose the argument and walk away with the person feeling loved than win an argument and then just what do you gain from it? Nothing. you know.
Yes. Yes. See, that's probably why the Lord's sending you and not me. So praise the Lord for that. And then the other thing is there might be people watching that will be blessed to hear you. So, well, I look forward to talking to you more. And I know you have I know you're debating whether you're going to keep your evolution channel. And I might
Well, I'm not going to take it down. Yeah.
Okay. I might be able to help you with content because
Cool.
I did see some of these. Okay, I'll try to be nice, Sal. Be nice. I did see some of the people in the comment section, and that did get under my skin. I'm just like, you guys are being so rude, not to mention you're wrong and you don't know what you're talking about. And, you know, just like Aaron
Yeah.
Raw, I'm just like, I've published more in evolutionary biology than you have, and I'm a creationist. So, you know,
Yeah.
so you can tell I have an
Did you
attitude.
see Aaron Raw on my Aaron Raw? Did you see him on my Bread of Life channel or my Evolution channel?
I don't know where.
Because he was on my Bread of Life channel, but I didn't know if he's seen my Evolution channel. So that's interesting. If I haven't actually,
No,
I haven't
was,
even looked at that channel or the comments for at least a month, maybe more, maybe 2 months. So I have to go see what's going on there. But I would love to pick it up. Aaron Ross. I would love to pick it up, but you know, right now I'm working full time, so it's very hard for me to just keep up with my Bread of Life channel. But I would love content if you have ideas, you know, for videos on that, or if you want to, you know, come on and talk about a topic, you know, that would be great.
Yes, let me think about that. Do you get Christians that come on your channel, that evolution channel, that need encouragement or lessons?
I mean, it's such a new channel. It only has like 70 subscribers, and it's most of the subscribers came from the
Bread of Life.
people like no, from these like your channel. Like a lot of these people who are here tonight and who support like SFT, you know, and like basically I would say standing for truth is probably the main way that I've got most of the subscribers to my evolution channel.
So I'm just thinking, okay, it's actually not necessarily great to get numbers from like the other side because they end up being trolls. I've kicked so many people off my channel, and that ends up making the dialogue here a lot smoother, and we actually have better conversations. And I've kicked a few creationists off anyway, just so we can have calmer dialogue. But I'm just trying to think what we can do for that. Well, we actually had a really good conversation, just like good basic arguments, like the one with the Asphalt Paradox, which is I call the Humpty Dumpty, and then the mammary glands and eukaryote, prokaryote. I'll see if I can get more of those.
Yeah.
I see if I could dig up easier, you know, examples that someone can learn in maybe less than half an hour.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, you could appear yourself and explain the argument on my evolution channel.
Okay,
right?
That's what yes, I can. I will.
Okay, cool.
And if it's all right with you after we do that, could I replay it here on this channel?
Of course.
Okay,
yes.
Just wanted to clear that with you. Because, yeah, then we can kill two birds with one stone. You get content on your channel, I get content on mine. This is also healthy for my channel. I don't know if you've seen some of my broadcasts here.
I have. Yeah, I've been on your channel a few times. Yeah.
Some of them are scary, nerdy, and I tend to have too many of those. That's partly because that's professionally what I've been working on. I need to get kind of broaden the arguments. And that's going to actually take work. So I'll see what I can dig up.
Well, maybe what we could do is you bring out one paper that you think illustrates something, maybe like, that maybe one evolution paper or something, and then we can go through it and we'll both read it beforehand. We'll go through and talk about it. I will be much less technical than you will be, so that will balance it out, because
Yes.
you can be technical and then I will be less technical.
But, and I want to share something. It's not all about criticizing evolution. It's about declaring the works of God. I have an apologetics group, and we actually study biology. It is partly a critique of evolution, but is more honoring of God's works. As it says in the Psalms, I will declare your wonderful works. And I kept wondering, why did our group keep doing? We had, like, in a year and a half time, we had 140 meetings. We were meeting twice a week. And it's like, no, this wasn't about learning how to debate or to refute evolution. Our faith was being built by just studying what God has made. And the more I thought about it, I said, there are many times when God's people were discouraged. And he said, well, look what I've done. So if you look at the book of Job, after he's just been put through the ringer, how does God answer him in the last few chapters of the book of Job? He said, look at all the creatures I've made. And look at all the things that I've made. If I can do this, there's a reason for what I put you through. And then Jesus, that verse, consider the lilies of the field, how they grow, they neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. In the 21st century, that makes more sense. That's more meaningful now, because the technology inside a lily is beyond anything. You could take all the scientists and engineers of the world, we wouldn't be able to build a lily of the valley.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. That's a beautiful point. And when you mentioned Job, and a lot of people will say, look how God treated Job. Why did God let Satan do that to Job? But then when you look at Job's reaction at the end, now, if the man himself who suffered all the things, what was his reaction to God's works at the end? His reaction was like, look, I've said things, I don't know what I'm talking about. You are God, right? And so, Job responded to the things that the Lord had done, and his works were so wonderful that it eclipsed Job's suffering. And I think that's part of the answer to the problem of evil is that like that the verse you quoted, these light and momentary troubles there's a glory that's gonna outweigh them all.
I already know what one of the creatures we'll study, because it has Christian themes in it built in. It's butterflies, because the caterpillar it goes into a caterpillar phase, and then it goes into the cocoon, and its body just kind of liquefies. All of its organs are rebuilt, and it comes a butterfly. It has a totally different diet than it did when it was a caterpillar. And it's amazing. There are many of these kind of quirky creatures that kind of really pretty much defy evolution, any sort of evolutionary explanation. People will immediately see the Christian themes. So I'll have to look at that one. There are a lot of video. It'd probably be one where I just need to make sure I can show the video without any copyright issues.
Yeah.
Because just when you see it, you're like, yeah, this didn't evolve.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Good.
We'll try that sometime.
Thank you so much.
All righty. Well, it's hard
Thank
saying
you,
goodbye. We're
everyone.
already almost at 2 hours. I told you 20 minutes, but we had too much fun. So
Yes, exactly. Yep. And thank you, everyone, for staying up late with us.
yep.
Perry wants
Rebecca's
to know
channel
what
name.
my Bread of Life, if you look up Bread of Life channel, it should be the first one that comes up.
Can you type something in the chat? And what I'll do is I'll make you a moderator. Then you can, in the future, you'll be able to dump any sort of links.
Yep.
It might just take.
I think somebody, I think it was SFT fan club that put my links in there earlier.
Oh, thank you, Doki.
Yes.
Okay, you're a moderator now.
Thank
All right,
you.
I'll see you later.
Okay.
Good
All
luck
right.
Saturday. God bless you.
Thank you.
Take
God
care.
bless you.